good morning, Singapore. Kaalay Vanakam. Sauon, Salamat Pegi. This is Singapore News bringing you with today's highlights. Current stats on COVID situation, more on that later with Matthew Mina. Singapore struggles during the pandemic, later with Kyle Portugaliza. New policies to be implemented, more on that with Chase Jimenez. And did Singapore contribute to ASEAN during the pandemic? Coming to you later with LA Santos.
Here's the Singapore's current statistical data about COVID-19. First of all, the statistical data was gathered by Worldometer and they based their data directly from the government's communication channels or other local media sources that are deemed reliable. So to give you a summary of the current data of Singapore, the total count of coronavirus cases since the first infection is 1,123,886 as of April 7, 2022. For the total deaths, they only have 1,287 as of April 7. And lastly, the total recovered is 1,046,731. So their total cases, deaths, and recovered ratio is very good compared to the other countries, which shows that they are prepared for this kind of situations. Unfortunately, there are still deaths which might have happened before there was a vaccine. Also, their current fatality rate is 0.1% and their recovery rate is 93.5% of the total cases. This data was retrieved from coronatracker.com. For the total cases recorded, started from February 15, 2020, where they recorded 72 cases, and as of April 5, 2022, there is a total of 1,119,419 cases. For their daily new cases, there was a spike at February 22, 2022, where they had 26,032 daily cases, maybe because of Valentine's Day, because starting November of 2021 to early January of 2022, the daily new cases was decreasing. Fortunately, the current new cases as of April 5, 2022 is 6,341. The active cases in Singapore are 71,404 current infected and is currently at a spike that started during April 2 with 73,409 infected. Lastly, for the total deaths, they recorded their first deaths in March 25, 2020 with 2 deaths, and as of April 5, 2022, the total deaths are 1,284. For the daily new deaths, the peak was during October 21, 2021, November 16, 2021, and March 4, 2022 with 18 deaths, and as of April 5, they only have 1 death.
This is Singapore's struggle during the pandemic. Just like any other country, Singapore wasn't prepared in facing the COVID-19. The lack of isolation facilities and large-scale management of a symptomatic case was only feasible thanks to the help of the Ministry of National Development by refitting large buildings and venues to operate as community isolation facilities. Another challenge was the divergence of labor market. This prompted household sectors like in the field of food and beverage services, retail trade, and accommodation in trimming their workforce, while office-based employment is highly sought after by applicants. Singapore was only at the mercy of the pandemic after vaccinating 80% of its population. After its government mishandling by being too confident with the situation, the government eased restrictions as soon as it achieves 80% of the vaccinated population, or as they call it, living with COVID. While yes, this was to jumpstart the economy, but new variants caused the catastrophic tenfold cases the number of a month earlier. That's all for struggles with the pandemic.
Policies implemented. On the pandemic's first year, Singapore was quick to act in implementing laws and regulations to combat the virus. The COVID 19 Temporary Measures Act 2020 was among its first passed laws. The law, which was read and debated on April 7, 2020, was also commenced on the day itself, along with the implementation of the circuit breaker period, which was to last from April 7 to May 4 primarily, but was extended until June 1. The act prohibited any forms of gatherings, whether outside or at home, and only allowed essential services to continue with work. Those who had failed to adhere to the act could face penalties like a maximum 6-month jail term, a fine of up to 10,000 Singapore dollars, or even both. Before this act, Singapore's Ministry of Health had already initiated the Infectious Diseases COVID-19 Stay Orders Regulations 2020 on March 26, 2020, to quote unquote give legal force to safe distancing measures and provide enhanced enforcement for breaches of stay home notices. Given the urgency of these rules and regulations, its implementations were expedited to mitigate what the virus can do. As of April 5, 2022, Singapore has made adjustments to the rules and regulations to better fit its current situation. Social gatherings are now allowed, but with certain rules. Social gatherings of up to 10 people are allowed in mask-off settings, and households may accept up to 10 visitors at any one time, with no restrictions on the number of house visits per day. Those who fail to comply are subject to a 10,000 Singapore dollar fine and or jail time of 6 months if prosecuted in court. Wearing of masks is still mandatory for ages above 6 in indoor settings. However, while greatly encouraged, masks in outdoor settings are now optional. Face shields may also be used in place of a face mask for children below 12 years of age who have difficulty wearing and keeping face masks for a prolonged period of time. People with health conditions that may result in medical difficulties when a mask is worn for a prolonged period of time, and for brides and grooms during the solemnization of their marriage. Teachers, however, are still mandated to use face masks. Violators are subject to the same penalties mentioned beforehand. Safe distancing or social distancing is not required anymore in masked-on settings, though encouraged. In mask-off settings, people are still required to maintain a 1 meter distance from each other. Vaccines in Singapore are offered for free to all Singaporeans and its long-term residents. You are considered fully vaccinated if you have received 2 primary doses and 1 booster dose. However, a second booster dose is being recommended as well. Dine-ins are now allowed in a group of up to 10 people as long as you adhere to certain rules, being fully vaccinated as one. Attractions and shopping malls are also open to people with a cleared status and children under 12 years old. Unvaccinated people, however, may only go to supermarkets and enter shopping malls only to purchase medical and childcare related services and needs. Religious services are now allowed as well. Services with more than 1,000 attendees are subject to a 75% capacity limit. Otherwise, there is no capacity limit at all. Lastly, indoor and outdoor sports activities are now allowed as well.
Singapore has been praised for its COVID-19 management, which has resulted in a relatively low number of virus-related deaths. On February 18, 2020, the Minister of Finance released a 4 billion Singaporean dollars stabilization and support package as part of the Unity Budget. That includes a number of initiatives to lessen the impact of COVID-19 on local and foreign workers. The government also unveiled a second stimulus package called the Resilience Budget on March 26, 2020, worth a whopping of 48.4 billion Singaporean dollars to help households, workers stay employed, and businesses to emerge stronger when the economy recovers. The resilience budget also included initiatives to assist specific sectors directly affected by the COVID-19 outbreak, including as aviation, tourism, food services, land transportation, and arts and culture. The circuit breaker was set to take effect on April 7, 2020. The government announced a third stimulus package worthing of 5.1 billion Singaporean dollars that was dubbed as the Solidarity Budget on April 6, 2020. In addition to the Solidarity Budget, the government also passed a new broad-based bill to provide further help. And finally, the government also announced the fourth stimulus package that was worth 33 billion Singaporean dollars that was known as the Fortitude Budget on 26th of May 2020. With a focus on creating jobs and building skills for workers, boosting enterprise transformation, and strengthening community resilience, with the circuit breaker that was gradually lifted from June 2nd, 2020, as the COVID 19 situation in Singapore gradually stabilizes, the country has entered the second phase of the government's reopening strategy for the economy. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Finance also announced in his ministerial statements on the 17th August and the 5th October 2020 extensions of certain current support schemes and new initiatives to provide continued support for businesses and jobs that have been impacted by the COVID 19 pandemic.
And this has been Singapore News. That's all for today. Good morning.